Welcome to today's lesson on using signals in Godot. And what I've got here, I've got a little character and he can move around the screen. We've got two keys here, and if you notice, the door has two red lights. If we click the first key, first light turns green, second key, second light turns green, and the door opens. And obviously that could take you to another level. So what we're going to look at is how we achieve this in Godot. And we're going to look at some very simple examples to start with, and then look at a signal bus where we're sending signals across scenes. Now what I've done in this video is I've joined several lessons from one of my courses, and what I'll do, if you want to jump between different sections of the video, you can. On the screen appearing at the moment are the timestamps and what actually takes part in each of the chapters. So feel free to jump between each of those. Word of caution though, I do build at each level, each step, I build on previous levels. So if you are an absolute beginner to Godot, you would probably find it useful to watch the full video. In this first example, let's keep things very simple. I'm going to create a new 2D scene. I'm going to rename this as level 1. I'm going to create a child node. I'll have a button here. And with my button selected, let me just resize that. I'll move it over here and give it some text. Click me. Now text is a little bit small, so let's just scroll down here to theme overrides, into my font sizes, and we'll set a font size around about 60 should be sufficient. Okay, with the click me button all done, let's go back to level 1. Let's add a sprite 2D. And all I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab the default icon and drop that into the texture area. Let me just resize that a little bit as well. And let's just move that over here. Now, as I said, to keep things simple, what I want to do is just click on the button, click me, and to do something with this little player here, this sprite 2D. In fact, I'll just rename him as player. So with the button selected, I can go across the inspector, and next to that, I've got this node panel, and I can see here the built-in signals, one of which is pressed. Now to do something with these, I will need a script either on the level 1, the button, or the player. I'm going to attach a script to level 1. I'll leave the defaults as they are and create. I'm just going to get rid of this default code here. So I'm going to go to my button. And with my button selected, what I want to do is double click on pressed. I'm going to attach the script to the level 1 script. It's going to be called on button pressed. That's okay. Connect. So on button pressed, what do I want to do? Well, if I select the player and go to the inspector, I have access to all of these properties here. If I was going to the visibility of it, I could change the color, but I'm just going to keep things simple and just turn it on and off, make it visible and invisible. And if I hover above visible, we can see that the property name there is called visible. So here, what I can do, get rid of pass. So I'll need a reference to my player. So all I'll do is just drag the player into the function. So $player, that is referencing this player here, dot visible equals false. I'll go ahead and Command or Control S to save this. Level 1, that's fine. Save, and we'll play this scene. So we've got click me. When I click on this button here, that should disappear. So click and it does disappear. Now what I'd like to do is, as I have more clicks on here, make it turn on and off. That's quite easy to achieve. So player.visible, what we can say is equal to not exclamation mark and player.visible. Okay, we can save that and go across and play that. So click me, it should disappear. Click again and it comes back. So a very simple example of using nodes within a scene. Probably one of the most common ways to use signals is when you're picking up a key or a coin within a game. Let's go ahead and have a look at how we can do that. So I've created another scene here called level 2, and I'm going to add a child to this scene. And this time let's have a character body 2D. And we'll double click on that and we'll call this one player. With this selected, I will add a child node. We'll just use a sprite 2D for this. And with player selected again, click on plus, and we'll have a collision shape as well. So collision shape 2D. With my sprite selected, I'm just going to use the default icon here and drag that and drop that into the texture area. And with the collision shape here, go across to the shape, and we'll select new rectangle. I'll zoom in a little bit here. Let's just resize that, hold down the option key, resize to approximately the size of the player. With the player selected, I like to group these. So I'm going to group these together, just zoom out a little bit as well. And then drag my player over here into the play area. And in fact, what I might do as well is just resize this player so it's a little bit bigger. So go across the transform area and change that scale maybe to 2. Just make it a bit bigger and easier to see on the screen. Now let's just add a default script to this player. So accept the defaults and create. The next thing I'm going to do is go to level 2, add a child node, and this one is going to be a static body 2D. This is going to be my ground or floor. And with the ground selected, I'm going to add a color rect. So just a color rectangle. I'll change this color over here to maybe some sort of green color, just to represent the ground. And then I'll just resize this. With my ground selected, I'm going to click on plus. I'm going to add a collision shape 2D. And with the collision shape 2D selected, over here, we're going to add a new world boundary. Go to my ground, group these 3 together, and then just drag that down to the bottom here. So now my player has somewhere to land. Before we go any further, I'm going to save this. So Command S or Control S if you're on a PC, and save. We'll go across and we can play that scene. My player lands on the ground. I can move left and right, and I can jump a little bit as well. Let's close that. The next thing I want to do is to add something for the player to collect. This could be like a coin or a key. So let's go to level 2. I'm going to add a new child node. This one is going to be an area 2D. And we'll just call this one coin. This is going to represent a coin. We're going to add a child node, and we'll just add a color rect on this. Let's maybe change the color, maybe to some sort of yellowy color to represent sort of a coin, like a gold coin. With coin selected, I'm going to add a collision shape. And then with my collision shape, we're going to add a rectangle. It's a new rectangle shape here. Let's just zoom in so we can see. And let's just resize that to around about the size of that color rectangle. With the coin selected, I'm going to group that. Zoom out a little bit again. And then just drag my coin and put it somewhere in my scene. I'll move it down a little bit so you can actually collect it. What I want to achieve here is when the player touches the coin will disappear. And there are various ways we could do this, but let's keep things really simple. I'm going to add a script to the coin and accept the defaults. We can get rid of this code here. And with the coin selected, let's go across to the nodes over here with the coin. We can see the various signals that are available to us. One is called body entered, and our player is indeed a character body. So I'm going to double click on that. Now, do I want to put this script on the player, or do I want to put it on the coin? I'm going to put this on the coin and connect. So when a body enters this coin, what do we want to do? All I want to do is do a Q free. That will make the coin disappear. We'll save that. We'll go across to the scene and play. So there's my player, there's my coin. Go across, touch the coin, and the coin disappears. So that's another very simple example of using the built-in nodes in Godot. In this third example, we're going to spawn some enemies, and those enemies will be spawned when a timer has elapsed. So we've got a timer. The timer will send a signal when it elapses to spawn an enemy. So here I have level 3. I'm going to add a child node, which is going to be an area 2D. And in my area 2D, let's just rename this as enemy. With my enemy selected, we will add a sprite 2D. With the enemy selected, we should add a collision ship as well. And with my sprite 2D, I'm just going to use the default icon. Just drag and drop that up into the texture area. And with the collision ship, let's add on here a rectangle 2D. And we'll just resize that to fit the approximate size of my enemy. With my enemy selected, I'm going to add a script. I accept the defaults. And the other thing I'm going to do here, I'll get rid of this ready function here. In the process, I'm going to change the position of the enemy. So the position dot y plus equals, and I'm going to add on, let's say 100, and we multiply that by delta. So that will make the enemy move down the screen. I suppose what we could do, instead of putting 100 here, we could put a variable up here, or a constant even. So a constant, which will be speed, and we'll set that to 100. And I suppose in here, we should change that to speed. Let me just get rid of this comment line here as well, just to keep things a little bit cleaner. Okay, so that should make the enemy move down the screen. And let's go across to the 2D scene. There's the enemy. Let's just group the enemy. Let's just move it inside here, and let's just play that scene. And then we have the enemy moving down the screen. So what we need to do now is to spawn these enemies across at random positions across the screen. Now what I want to do is to take this enemy, and I'm going to move it into its own scene. So save branch as scene, I'll call this enemy. And we're just going to open that, so open that enemy scene. So there's the enemy scene here. And I'll just reset this back to its default position. So we'll transform that back to position 0, 0. Okay, in level 3, let me just save that. So I've got this enemy in here. I'm going to remove this single enemy from here. So delete that, because I want to spawn everything. So in level 3, what I want to add is a timer node. So timer. With timer selected, I'm going to do this every, well, let's have it 1 second, and it'll be an auto start. And then when the timer has timed out, I want to have this level 3, I need a script on there, I'll need to spawn the enemy. So let me add a script to level 3 first of all, accept the defaults. And I'll go back to my timer. And on timeout, on my level 3 script, on timer timeout, what do I want to do? This is where I want to spawn the enemy. Let me get rid of all this code here. So to spawn the enemy, the first thing I need to do is say @onReady var, and let's have enemy scene. So enemy underscore scene, and that is equal to, we're going to preload. And what are we preloading? We're going to preload the enemy scene. Okay, so when the game starts, we're going to wait until this enemy scene has preloaded, and we're going to assign it into here. The next thing I need to do is in this here on timer timeout, I'm going to have a var. This is going to be my enemy instance. And that is going to be the enemy scene dot instantiate. So I'm instantiating a copy of this scene and storing it in enemy instance. What I then need to do, I need to add the child. So I'm going to add this enemy instance to the scene. Now I did say that I want the position of this enemy to be somewhere at the top of the screen. So I want the enemy to be up here somewhere. Let's just zoom out a little bit. So the enemy will be positioned up here, and it will just fall down the screen. And I want it to be randomly positioned across here. So in my level 3 script then, so what I want to do in here then is the enemy instance dot position is going to be equal to a vector 2. And this vector 2 needs an x and y ordinate. The x position is what I'm really interested in, having that random number. So I want a random range between two numbers. So if I come in 50 pixels from the left-hand side, comma, and then 50 pixels from the right-hand side, well, my width is 1980. So if I go to 1930, that will give me a random number between 50 and 1930, comma, and my Y value, I want it to start off the screen, so let's say -20. I'm then adding the child, and that should work. Okay, well, let's just do a quick preview. Well, there's my first one, there's my second one, and as you can see, they're coming in at random positions along the X-axis. Now we do have a bit of a problem here because as these enemies are being spawned, they are not actually being destroyed. If I go into the remote view here, we can see all of these enemies here. So we need to take care of that. Let me just stop that scene there. Let's go to the enemy scene. And in my enemy scene, I want to add a child node, which is going to be a visible on-screen notifier 2D. With that selected, if I go across to the nodes here, we can see screen exited. If I double click on that, I'm going to add this to the enemy script. We'll connect. And what do I want to do here? Well, quite simply, I just want to queue free. Let's go across to level 3 and we'll play that scene. Now we've got the enemies still falling down here. If I go across to the remote view over here, we can see the enemies coming through. And eventually, as these fall off the screen, they should start to be deleted. And there we go, they are indeed being deleted. So that was another example of some fairly easy use of signals using Godot. And we used two then. We used one on the timer signal, and then we used the visibility notifier signal as well. Before we start to create our own signals, I want to look at how we can use the default signals and calling those through code. So I've gone ahead and opened level 2 again, and you should recall this from early in the video. We've got level 2 with a player, it's just a character body 2D, it's a default script on there. We've got the ground level down here, and then we've got a coin, which is just a color rectangle, collision shape attached, and then we've got this signal. And the signal is on body entered, all we're doing is queue free. So we're getting rid of the coin. And there is the signal code here. On body entered, just queue free. If we play that scene, we've got the player, goes along, collects the coin, and the coin disappears. Now what I want to do here is to add a second coin. So I'm going to add a child node here. It's going to be an area 2D. This area 2D I will call coin 2. I will add a color rectangle to this again. And in the inspector, let's just change this to maybe a pink or red sort of color. And then with coin 2 selected, we will add a collision shape 2D, define the collision shape as a rectangle. So if I go to the 2D window here, there's my second coin here. Let me just resize that collision shape. Like that. And then I'll group the coin together, all these three nodes joined together. I'll zoom out again, and then just move that over here so we can pick it up. And pop that down there. I'm going to add a script to this coin. And just accept the defaults. Now, if you recall, what we did with coin 1 is we used the inbuilt signals. If I go to coin 2, we do have this body entered signal, but I don't want to just double click and use that code like that. I want to actually call it from code. And the way we can do that in this ready function here, we can just say body entered. That's the name of this signal here, body entered, dot. And we want to connect to that. And we're going to connect it to a function. And the function can be called anything. I'll just call it my function. And then down here, I can define that function. So function, my function. Now this function here, this body entered, actually passes in the body. So in here, my function, I can take that body parameter that's being passed in. Okay, now once I've done that, what do I want to do here? Well, I just want to do the same thing as I've done before. I just want to queue free. Okay, that's all good. Let's go across and we'll do a quick preview of that. So I can go along, click the first coin as normal, and then click the second coin, and that one disappears as well. Okay, well, let's just enhance this a little bit further. Let's say I want to know the name of the body that collects the coin, and I also want to know the name of the coin that's being collected. Well, this is where we can start to define our own custom signals here. So I'm going to have a signal called coin collected. And in this coin collector, I'm going to pass in two parameters. The first one is the body, so which body has actually collected this coin. And the second one is the coin ID. And then down here in my function, what I can do here then is we'll say, well, coin collected dot emit. So when this coin has been collected, I am going to emit this signal. And I can pass in the parameters here. Now the first one is the body. So what body has actually collected this coin? Well, that's the body. And let's grab the name of that. So body.name, and that should give me player. So body.name, comma. And the second thing I want here is the name of the coin. So this coin ID. Now, because this script is on the coin, I can just type in self.name, and that will give me the name of that coin. The next thing I want to do then is to go to level 2, and I'm going to add a script to that and just accept the defaults. Now in this second script here, under the ready function, what I want to do here is to connect to the signal in coin 2. So I want to target coin 2, so $coin2 dot. Then I want to get the name of that signal. Now the name of the signal is coin collected, and then dot. I want to connect to that. And then I want to target my own function. And this function will just print a message. So I'll call this print message. So my function here, I'm going to call print message and run brackets and finish with a colon here. Now with this print message function, it will accept those two parameters that have been passed by the signal. The first one, if you recall, was the body, and the second one is the coin ID or the coin name. So in here then, I want to print out a message. So print, and the first thing I'm going to say is, well, let's print out the name of the coin ID. So coin ID. And now I'm going to add on a string here. I'm going to say has been collected by, and then in here I want the player. So that is the body. So we see what's going on here. So what we have is the body entered. So when this body is entered, we are connecting to this function here, called my function. We are passing in this body parameter. So which body has touched the coin? We're then connecting to coin collected, this signal, and emitting that signal, passing in two parameters. One is the name of the body that's touched the coin. The second parameter is the name of the coin itself. And then we just queue freeing. This is being picked up by this level script. First thing we're doing is we're connecting to that signal. So we're listening out for that signal. When that signal is emitted, we are calling this function here, and we're taking the two passed in parameters. We're then printing out a message to say that this particular coin has been collected by this particular body. Let's go ahead and play that. So the first yellow coin, that queue frees as normal. Now when I pick up this pink coin, we should see down here, we should see a little message. And there we go, coin 2 has been collected by player. Now that we've started to create signals and emit signals via code, I thought it'd be interesting to create everything via code. And in particular, to have one scene communicate with another, even though they don't know about each other. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new 2D scene. Let's rename this one as button. Going to create another scene. And this one is going to be for a label. And then a third scene is going to act as an intermediary. This is going to be the main scene. And each of the other two scenes will be children of this main scene. Let me go to the button here. I'll just do a quick save on this. That's button. We'll save the label as well. And we'll save the main. In my button scene, I'm going to add a script. I'm going to have, let's say, I'm going to have an empty script here. We'll create that. So we're extending node 2D. In here, the first thing I want to do is to create a signal. My signal name is going to be button pressed. And we're going to have a parameter here, which is going to be a message. And the message is going to be of type string. I'm now going to use the ready function. So function underscore ready. And in this ready function, what I want to do is I want to create an instance of a new button. So we're going to have a var called button, and we're going to have that equal to button.new. So we're going to create a new button. Taking my newly created button then, so button, I'm going to target the text element and put that equal to click me. I then want to position this button somewhere on my scene. So button.position equals. Now the position is going to be a vector 2. And let's say I want this 100 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top. When this button is pressed, I want to send that signal to a function. So we're going to have button dot pressed. So this is the pressed signal. So when that button has been pressed, we want to connect, and we're going to connect to on button pressed. So this is a function that I'm going to write. And then all I'll need to do is add the child to the scene, and I'm going to add the button. I now need to create the function on button pressed. Let's go ahead and do that. So function, and it's going to be on button pressed. And what I want to do here is to emit the signal. So I'm going to take button pressed, that signal, dot emit, and I'm going to pass in the following message. And I'm just going to say, hello from button. So what's happening here, we've declared a signal called button pressed, and we're passing in a message, which is a string. In my ready function, we are setting up a new instance of a button. We're setting the text to click me, and then we're positioning the button at this position here. We're going to take the button. When the button is pressed, we are connecting it to this function here that I've defined, and then we just add the button to the scene. The actual function says, take this signal, button pressed, and emit it with this message here. And that signal will be sent to anybody or any node that is listening for it. Okay, well, let's go across to the label. And in here, we're going to add another script. And again, we'll have an empty script here. And what I want to do here is declare a variable for a label. So my var label, which will be of type label. I'm then going to go into the ready function. So function ready. And in my ready function, what I want to do is to create a new label. So I'm going to take my label, and this is going to be equal to label.new. In other words, I'm creating a new label node, which is called label. And I want to set the text within that label. So label.text equals, and let's just say something like waiting for a signal. I want to give this label a position. So label.position equals, it's going to be a vector 2. And we're going to go 100 across and 100 from the top. And the last thing I need to do is then just add the child, which is the label. So add the label to the scene. So what's going to happen is we're going to go along, we're going to press the button, we're going to send a signal, and we want this label to pick up that signal and to change the text. And the text is going to change from waiting for a signal to hello from player or hello from button, whatever it is. Now we need to have a function to make that change. My function is just going to be called update label. And obviously we're passing in a message, which is of type string. And all I need to do here is just to update the label text, so label.text, and that's going to equal message. Now, obviously the label doesn't know about the button and the button doesn't know about the label, so we need an intermediary scene. So when that button is pressed, we're sending a signal. The signal is going to be picked up by this main scene here. And then that main scene is going to call this function update label, which will change the message. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll add a script and an empty script. We're going to create a function ready. So function ready. And in this ready function, what I want to do is instantiate each of the scenes, the button scene and the label scene. So I'm going to have var button equals, I'm going to preload. And what am I preloading? Well, I'm going to preload the button scene, so that one there. And then I want to instantiate that. So dot instantiate. I want to do the same thing for the label. So var label equals preload. And what am I preloading? I'm preloading the label scene. And then I want to dot instantiate that. I then need to add each of those to the scene. So I'm going to add a child. And which child am I going to add? I'm going to add the button. I'm going to add another child, which is going to be the label. Now all I need to do is to listen for the button pressed signal. So I'm targeting the button, dot, button pressed, that was the name of the signal, dot connect, and then in brackets, what do I want to put in here? Well, I want to call the update label function. So in other words, this function here, update label, I need to call that. So that is within the label scene dot update underscore label. So hopefully that all makes sense. We have the button. In the button, we have a signal button pressed, passing in a message, which is a string. We've set up the button and then added the button to this button scene. With a function on button pressed, it's going to emit the signal hello from button. In the label, we've set up a label. In the function ready, we've just set the label up on the screen, added it to the scene, and then we've got this function ready waiting to update the label text. Our intermediary is the main scene. That's going to add each of those scenes to the main scene, and it's going to connect to this button pressed signal on button. It's going to connect to that, and when it receives that signal, it's going to go to the label and then update the label with the passed in message. Let's go ahead and play that. So there we've got the click me waiting for a signal. So when I click on this, this should change to hello from button. And there we go. So hopefully that's given you an idea of how to send signals between scenes, even though they don't know about each other. We now move on to looking at a singleton or an autoloader that will control these signals. So what I've got here is a little scene, just very basic scene set up here. I've got level 1, and in level 1, I have my ground. My ground is just a color rectangle on a static body with a collision shape, and there's my ground down there, you can see it. We have an instance of the player scene. We have the door lock, which is represented by these two color rectangles, and currently they are set to red, light 1 and light 2. And then we have two keys, key 1 and key 2. Let's have a look at the key scene. The key scene is just an area 2D with a sprite attached and then a collision ship, which is just a capsule layer. And then the player, I've got an animated sprite 2D with a collision ship attached. And I do have a script on the player just to control the movements, and that's a default standard script. Okay, what I want to do then is when I collect this key here, either key 1 or key 2, I want to turn the light green. And then when I collect the second key, the second light will turn green. And I'm going to use an autoloaded script to do that. So down here, I'm going to create a new script. So create new script. I'm going to call this signals. And then what I'm going to do in my project settings up here, go to project settings, go to Autoload. What I'm going to do, I'm going to search for that Autoload script there, which is going to be signals, and open. It says, do I want to call it signals? Yes, I do. And click on add, and then close. So that signals autoloader will be loaded when I play the game. Let's take care of the keys. So I've got my key scene here, and let's just add a script to that and create. Let's just get rid of this default code here. So what I want to do here is when my key is entered by the body, so on a body entered, I want to remove the key. I also want to emit that signal to say that the key has been collected. Let me just do body entered first of all. We're attaching this to the key, connect. What I want to do here, we're just going to do a queue free. So queue free. Now this key doesn't know about the player and it doesn't know about the level, and likewise the player doesn't know about the key. And that's why we use that singleton, that autoloaded script signals.gd. So I'm going to load that. Let's get rid of this default code here and let's create the signal, which we'll call key collected. So let's go back to the key then. And what we can do in here is we can call upon that signal. So what we can say is go to the signals script, then grab the key collected signal dot emit. Once that signal has been emitted, we're going to pick it up with level 1. So in level 1, let's add a script. Create on there. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to have the function ready. And then in this function ready, we want to connect to that signal. So we're going to go to signals dot key collected dot connect. And what do we want to do then once we've connected? Well, we want to go to our own function. And in this function, this is going to turn the lights green. So let's say switch lights. Now we haven't created that function yet, so let's go ahead and do that. So we've got function. This is called switch lights. And in here, let's just target one of the lights. Let's target light 1. So if I drag light 1 into here, we'll target that. And I want to target the color property of that. And I want to set that equal to 00, F, 00. So R, G, and B. So red, green, and blue. Okay, let's go ahead and play that and see what happens. So we've got the player, we can go along, we can connect a key, and there we've got one of the lights turning green. Now if we do the second one, obviously we're just targeting that one light, but what we can do is we can target the second one. Let's go ahead and do that. So the other light then is light 2. So similar sort of thing, let's drag that in there. And what I want to do here is say dot color equals, and again, 00, F, 00. Now, if you think about it, what's going to happen here is if I collect a single key, then both lights should turn green. Let's play that. So if I collect this single key, both lights turn green. I don't want that to happen. I want it to happen when I collect each key. Now what we can do over in our signals script here is we can set up a variable. So a variable, let's call it keys collected. Let's put that equal to 0 to start off with. Then in my key script, when I've entered or collected a key, we're emitting this signal. Now what we want to do in here is we want to go to the signals dot keys collected, and in here we want to add on 1. So we come along, we collect a key, we send the signals.keys collected, and we increase that by 1. We then go ahead and emit the signal and then queue free on the key. Then in my level 1 script here, I can just do a little if then. So if the signals dot keys collected is equal to 1, then what am I going to do? I'm going to turn the first light green. If signals dot keys collected is equal to 2, then I'm going to send the second light green. I'll just change that to keys collected. Okay, let's go ahead and try that. So we've got the player, moves along, collects the first key, first light turns green, collects the second key, and the second light turns green. So hopefully you can see that is the start of a very simple door unlocking system where we have to collect a certain number of keys, we activate certain lights, we can unlock doors, etc. This is the example I showed at the very start of the video where we go along, we pick up a key, we pick up a second key, and then the door unlocks, and obviously that could take you to another level. If you are interested in following along in a lot more detail as I build this level, then head along to the link in the description and you'll find the full online course.